Imagine for a second that you are the most powerful person on the planet. You've just won one of the biggest landslide elections in history. You have the keys to the White House, the nuclear codes, and the world at your feet. But you're also terrified. You're convinced that everyone is out to get you. So you decide to play dirty. You send a team of plumbers to break into a building to steal secrets from your enemies. It seems like a small, messy operation, a third-rate burglary. But that one decision is about to trigger a domino effect that will destroy your career, change the laws of your country, and forever break the trust of a nation. Today, we're going deep. We're stripping away the dry history books and the political jargon to tell the real story of the Watergate scandal. This isn't just about a break-in. This is a story of paranoia, secret tapes, and a president who thought he was above the law. I'm Chunky Pondy, and this is what really happened at Watergate. To understand why Watergate happened, we have to understand the man at the center of the storm, Richard Milhouse Nixon. Nixon was brilliant, but he was also deeply insecure. By 1972, he was seeking re-election. On paper, he was winning. He had opened the door to China and was working on de-escalating the Cold War. But inside the Nixon White House, there was a siege mentality. They had an enemies list. They felt like they were at war with the press, the anti-war movement, and the Democratic Party. The 1970s in America was a powder keg. Vietnam was tearing the country apart, and the government was obsessed with leaks. Nixon's team created a special investigative unit nicknamed the Plumbers. Their job? To stop leaks. But soon their job shifted from protecting national security to ensuring Nixon's political survival by any means necessary.
And that brings us to the night of June 17, 1972. The Watergate is a massive luxury office and residential complex in Washington, D.C. It's fancy, it's modern, and that night, it was supposed to be quiet. But at around 2:30 a.m., a security guard named Frank Wills noticed something strange. He saw a piece of duct tape over a door latch in the basement, preventing it from locking. He pulled it off, he went on with his rounds, but when he came back later, the tape was back. Someone was inside. Wills didn't hesitate. He called the police. When the cops arrived, they found 5 men in business suits and surgical gloves inside the Democratic National Committee headquarters. They were carrying wiretapping equipment and thousands of dollars in crisp sequential $100 bills. At first, it looked like a weird botched robbery. But then, the police looked at the address books of the burglars. Inside, they found a name and a phone number that changed everything. E. Howard Hunt. And next to his name, it said White House. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. If Nixon had just admitted his team went rogue, he might have survived. But that's not what happened. The very next morning, the cover-up began. Behind closed doors, Nixon and his chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman, formulated a plan. They didn't want the FBI investigating where that money came from, because it came from Nixon's re-election campaign. Nixon famously told Haldeman to tell the CIA to lean on the FBI and say, "Don't go any further into this. This is a national security matter." That right there, that was the smoking gun. That was an obstruction of justice. From that moment on, the President of the United States was a co-conspirator in a federal crime. While the White House was busy scrubbing files and shredding documents, 2 young reporters at the Washington Post were starting to pull on a thread. You probably know their names, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein.
They were the B-team reporters. No one expected them to break the story of the century. But they had a secret weapon, an anonymous source known only as Deep Throat. They would meet him in dark parking garages in the middle of the night. Deep Throat's advice was simple but haunting. Follow the money. Woodward and Bernstein discovered that the Watergate break-in wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a massive, coordinated campaign of political espionage and sabotage run by the White House. They were bugging phones, forging letters, and following the wives of politicians. It was a dirty tricks operation on a scale America had never seen. For months, the White House denied everything. They called the Post's reporting shoddy and biased, and for a while, it worked. Nixon won the 1972 election in a landslide. But the truth has a funny way of leaking out. In 1973, the burglars went to trial. One of them, James McCord, wrote a letter to the judge. He admitted that they had been pressured to plead guilty and stay silent, and that high-ranking White House officials were involved. The dam broke. Suddenly, Nixon's top aides, Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and Dean were resigning or being fired. The Senate opened a televised investigation, and that's when the world met John Dean. John Dean was the White House counsel. He sat before the Senate and, in a calm, monotone voice, told them that he had told the president there was a cancer growing on the presidency. He implicated Nixon directly in the cover-up. But it was Dean's word against the president's. It was a he said, she said. There was no physical proof. Until a man named Alexander Butterfield was asked a routine question by a Senate staffer. Is there any kind of recording system in the Oval Office? Butterfield looked up and said, yes.
Everything changed in that moment. Since 1971, Nixon had been secretly recording every conversation in the Oval Office. He wanted them for his memoirs. He wanted to record history. Instead, he had recorded his own downfall. On August 8, 1974, Richard Nixon became the first and only U.S. president to resign. I want you to picture the scene. Nixon stands in the East Room, saying goodbye to his staff. He looks exhausted, his eyes darting around. He gives a rambling speech about his mother and his career. Then he walks out to the South Lawn, climbs the steps of the helicopter, and turns. It was a bizarre, haunting image. A man defeated, yet still trying to project strength. A few minutes later, the helicopter lifted off, and Gerald Ford was sworn in as president. Ford famously told the nation, "Our long national nightmare is over." But was it really over? Before Watergate, most Americans trusted the government. They believed the president might be wrong, but they didn't believe the president would be a criminal. Watergate shattered that. It birthed the era of cynicism we live in today. It's why we add the suffix "gate" to every single scandal now, from Bridgegate to Deflategate. It became the universal shorthand for "the people in power are lying to you." So what did we actually learn? Watergate teaches us that the system can work. It took a security guard, 2 persistent reporters, a brave whistleblower, and a courageous judiciary to bring the truth to light. It showed that in a democracy, no one, not even the president, is above the law. But it also serves as a warning. It shows how easily power can corrupt when it's wrapped in paranoia. It reminds us that the health of a nation depends on the transparency of its leaders. Looking at the world today, with all the fake news debates and political polarization, I have to ask you, do you think we've learned the lessons of Watergate? Or are we just waiting for the next smoking gun tape to drop? Thanks for watching this deep dive into history. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that shaped our world. Until next time, I'm Chanki Pandey. Keep asking questions.